Apparently, in the St. Petersburg Zoo, there was a gentleman by the name of Saint Nick. He was one of the leaders in Russia in the 19th century, and he decided to build a biblical zoo or have one biblical exhibit. And what did he do? He decided to put a lamb and a lion in the same cage in order to fulfill the pasuk V'gar Namer Keves, because he felt that he was ushering the Messianic era, because rather Russia was at its height and the Tsar was at its pinnacle, and Russia was literally going to usher in the salvation to the world. You should know, by the way, all major revolutionist movements always think that they're ushering the Messianic era. Right? Hitler thought it was a pagan type of Messianic vision, but there's no question it's part of it. And here in the 19th century, the whole Russian Tsarist movement saw themselves as this revolution, and they wanted to, shall we say, fulfill this biblical commandment. It's not biblical, I should say, this prophecy in the prophet Yeshayahu. And they asked him, well, I don't understand, how are you going to do that? He says, very simple. Every day, I'll put 2 lambs in the pen. And this way, V'gar Namer Keves. And then someone told me that in the Tel Aviv Zoo, they also wanted to have this Gar Namer Keves. And so what did they do? People said to her, it's unbelievable that you're ushering in the Messianic era. It's the Pasuk in Yeshayahu, which talks about, the future days. And they said, how do you do it? He says, very simple. Every day I replace the lamb. So, the question is, do we take these psukim literally, figuratively? What are they supposed to mean? How are we supposed to understand them? And I think in order for us to really even appreciate that, we need a bit of almost a preamble. And I really want to dedicate these, the spring and summer shirim to a wonderful young lady who passed away far too young, Mrs. Edith Nussbaum. Some of you know who she is, from Bat Yosef. Her and her husband, Mark Nussbaum, are my old, friends of my parents. They're longtime Torontonians. I want to just dedicate these shirim in her memory. Some might know her children. A lot of her children, grandchildren live in Toronto. Some live in New York. Florida, and some in Israel. So, okay. Let's take a look at a famous Gemara. These are one of these Gemaras that are famous, but this is really famous, right? I guarantee some of you even heard this line before. And it starts in source number 1. I'm going to translate everything. Amar Rava. B'shah shemachnisin adam lidin. When a person faces this final set of justice. Now, when this is going to take place, I'm not even going to deal with because it's a little complicated. I will deal with it over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to attempt to anyways. But at some point in time, everyone's going to face the heavenly tribunal. And at that point in time, they ask this person the following question, or questions, I should say. Nasata v'nasata be'emuna. Did you deal faithfully in business? Now, if this was a business ethics shiur, then I'd say, can you believe it? The first question will be, I apologize, I'm in our source sheets. That's okay, it's a good thing. You listen. The first question will be asked you when you pass away at 120, right? Can you believe the first question that you're asked is, were you honest in business? So again, what?
That's what you do most of your day.
That's what you do most of your day, exactly. So again, if this was a business ethics shiur, that would be my focus. But it's not, so we're going to continue. Kavat itim la Torah, did you establish fixed times to learn Torah? Not did you learn all day, not did you spend 12, no, did you just set aside time that you were serious about, that you were committed to? Certain things that we do, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to revolve my entire day and even my week, because this is my set time to learn. Like many of you did today, right, on a Wednesday afternoon. Next question. Asakta b'piriv rivia. Do you engage in having children? And here's the question, which obviously is for our purpose. Tzipita la Yeshua. Now, Tzipita la Yeshua, if you want to translate that into English, how would you translate the expression Tzipita la Yeshua? What does that mean? Did you long anticipate for the redemption? Okay, and then the Gemara continues. What exactly does it mean, Tzipita la Yeshua? There's a story they say of the Chavetz Chaim, that the Chavetz Chaim, every night before he went to bed, what would he do? He'd place his Yom Tov suit right next to his bed, so in the event that Mashiach would come, he'd be ready and be dressed appropriately for that moment, right? they say that in the later part of his years, Chofetz Chaim, they'd wake him in the middle of the night to give him medicine. When they woke him up, he'd say, "Oh, Mashiach's here." Now, I'm not on such a level. Usually when I wake up in the middle of the night, I just want to be able to know when I can roll over and go back to bed. But there's something interesting. What does it mean, Tzipita Yeshua? So you could say, oh, it's the Chofetz Chaim. That the Chofetz Chaim, every night, and he was serious. It wasn't like lip service. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I thought, maybe before I was serious. Maybe I wasn't so serious. I don't know. And I said, hopefully we're going to learn Yerushalayim together. I was hoping we would, right? But, okay, if not Yerushalayim, then New York University, right? So, is that like just like, do you have to say that? Is it like the nice thing to say? Is right, like some people, I'll see in Yerushalayim. If not, I'll see it tomorrow at noon. Right? Does that mean Tzipita Yeshua? And what about if you don't? What about if you just say, let's make a meeting for next week? How could you make a meeting in Toronto for next week? Aren't we going to be in Yerushalayim next week? Right? So what does it mean? What does it entail? What does it involve in? Before we can even begin and to understand the idea of Mashiach, I think this is going to be an important point. I want to show you that clearly hoping for Mashiach is quite important. And when we say, by the way, L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim, we don't mean that Mashiach should come in 12 months from now. We mean that when we do this act again next, it'll be in Yerushalayim. Right? So that was clear. It wasn't like, okay, L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim, oh, okay, that means we've got 12 months. No, it's not what it meant. By the end of the Seder, by the end of Yom Kippur, what it means is L'shan haba, when we celebrate Yom Kippur again. Right? By the way, the whole conversation is going to be Yom Kippur. Okay, we'll have to talk about that too at some point, right? I don't think 3 weeks is enough. Maybe to continue. Summer's going to be long now. At the end of Yom Kippur, what happens? At the end of Yom Kippur, don't people sing the L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim? I do it. No? Yeah. Okay, so does that mean that like in 12 months from now, in Yerushalayim? No, it means that next time we celebrate Yom Kippur, it's in Yerushalayim. So the question is, by the way, will there be Yom Kippur in the times of Mashiach? Okay, so that will be a conversation we're going to have to discuss a little bit later on. Otherwise, and by the way, don't we say that during the Pesach Seder? L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim? So what does that mean? So if you say there's going to be Pesach and there's going to be Yom Kippur, I understand it. But you just said there's not going to be Pesach or Yom Kippur. So you have to understand what that... Okay, so this is one of these fallacies to really understand properly. We'll get there. Because I'll tell you why. We say things L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim, but why are we saying about the Pesach Seder? If there's not going to be Pesach. No? Or Yom Kippur. So wait a second. Will there be Jewish holidays? Not be Jewish holidays. So okay, we have to understand that in like 6 weeks from now. Okay. So... Not Mashiach, meaning, okay. And by the way, if Mashiach does come, and we haven't finished the Shirim, then I don't know what we're going to do. How are we going to... Anyways, whatever, we'll figure that out. That's be the worst thing that happens. Now, I want to show you there's a very interesting Midrash in source 3, which is based and predicated upon source 2. And I think there's a message here that's very important. It says that we say in Perek in Hillel, Kavo kivisi Hashem. So what is the word Kavo kivisi? What's Hatikva? What's Hatikva? Hope. We long. So Kavo kivisi Hashem. We long for, we yearn for, right? Vayet Elai, Hashem turns us, Vayishma Shavasini, Hashem hears our salvation. So, says the Midrash, says the Yalkut Shimoni in source 3, and this is what's important. Ein biyad Yisrael hakavoy. All we can do is hope. All we can do is long. Meaning the Gula will come because we still await. When a Jew is asked, has Mashiach come? Our answer is not yet. And we know of the stories from the camps. And we know the stories that took place in many different times among the Jewish people scattered across Europe, across the world. No matter what happened, the Jew never stopped saying L'shan haba b'Yerushalayim. No matter how difficult things were, no matter how almost impossible it seemed, somehow the Jew has always hoped. And I think it's a very important, powerful idea, is that we can never give up. Right? And I think that is the first way to understand what does it mean, Tzipita Yeshua. It could be understood as we, the Jewish people, are based and are predicated upon this notion of Hatikva, of the hope. A Jew always hopes. We never give up. The notion of surrendering, of giving up, I don't mean from an individual perspective, as a national perspective, from a religious perspective, the Jews always said, tomorrow is going to be better than today. And I think that's the first important message, and one way to understand what does it mean when the Gemara asks you, Tzipita Yeshua, did you give up? Did you say it's over? Or no? Did you say, you know what, the Jewish people, are things tough? Are things challenging? Yes. Things are going to get better tomorrow. The Jewish people are still going to be stronger. Right? There might have been a Hillel Hashem today, but tomorrow there's going to be a Kiddush Hashem. And I'm going to play a role in that. And I'm going to play an active role in that. Okay. Now, I want to highlight something in the Rambam. Again, I just want to highlight on this issue because there's so much to talk about. I want to just hone in on this idea of Tzipita Yeshua. Before we get into the Rambam's concept of Mashiach, which I hope to get to in the second half of today's year, I want to notice something just on this idea of Tzipita Yeshua and the Rambam, which is very difficult to understand. Yeah, question.
Questions during this year?
And only if it's on this specific topic. Yeah, for sure.
How can you actively do that?
Oh, the Rambam writes, very good, take a look. So, great, excellent question. How do you actively do that? So the Rambam writes the following. I meant to underline it and I didn't. Here we go. I'm going to read the first 3 lines, although we're going to have to come back to them later because they're going to be very important. But again, I just want to get to the 3rd line, but I want to read from the beginning. We're reading from Hilchot Malachim, Perek Yud Aleph. It's very helpful. The Rambam codified, as we know, all of Jewish law, right? He wrote all of Jewish law, halacha, pertaining not just to practical mitzvos that pertained in the Middle Ages, but even laws that pertained to the matters that didn't involve the Jewish community for hundreds of years. All the issue of karbanos and all the idea of kachim, and he even wrote about Jewish kingdom and Jewish nationality. And in the laws of Hilchot Malach, the laws of kings, right? Look at what he writes. This is towards the end. And by the way, just also, which is important, half of these one half of the paragraph disappeared, was censored. You'll see why it was censored. But thank God, we have to thank the Muslims, and the Muslim community didn't care about censorship. The Christian community who controlled the printing press cared a lot about censorship, and that's why certain Gemaras had to have been censored and changed, and as we'll see in a minute, a Rambam had to have been edited, and the only reason why we have the original text was preserved through the Muslim countries. Because they didn't care so much about, if anything appeared to be against Jesus, the Muslims sure didn't care, whereas the Christians cared, so the Jews had to censor them. And they didn't take things as personally, and many of the Muslims were illiterate, so they couldn't even read it and understand it. So, between those 3 reasons, we preserved a couple of Gemaras and the Rambams and other places that were just, for example, it was only the Christians who destroyed vast volumes of handwritten Kabbalas Balei Tosfos. It was the Christians. It was in France. They destroyed a tremendous amount. We read the Kina on Tisha B'Av, which isn't so far away. One of the Kinos that we read were the truckloads of remember, there's no photocopy in those days, handwritten manuscripts of the Rishonim that were lost forever, that we'll never be able to get back again, because they were handwritten and they were burnt up in carts and flames in the city of Paris, right? Again, that was done by our Christian friends, whereas our Muslim friends, weren't as, in those days, meshuggah about certain things. So we'll get there too. Let's continue reading. So here we go. HaMelech HaMashiach atid lamod v'lachzir machus David Yoshna lememshala rishona. The Melech HaMashiach, the King of Mashiach. So what does Mashiach mean, by the way, literally?
Anointed.
The anointed one, right? So this guy will be a king. By the way, Mashiach, sorry ladies, is probably going to be a male, because we know that the Gemara says Melech v'lo Malka. The Mashiach has to be a male, has to be a king. Anointed one. And what will he do? He will bring back political sovereignty to the Jewish people. Lachzir Malchus Beis David. Beis David, which disappeared hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, will one day be returned to its original kingdom. Ubona, and here's the criteria. You want to know what the Mashiach will do? Again, we're going to come back to this a little bit later, but I want to start with this. What's the criteria? Here's the checklist. Are you Mashiach? Well, here we go. 1. Bona HaMikdash. 2. Mekabet Nidche Yisrael. The ingathering of the nations. 3. Returning back to the laws like they used to be. Exactly what that means is unclear. Makrivim korbanos, offering sacrifices. Next. By the way, even though today, according the Shita of the Rambam is that you can bring a korban. You know which korban, according to the Rambam, you can bring today? In 2015, there's a korban you can bring. According to the Rambam, you know what it is? Korban Pesach. You ever seen these people want to bring Korban Pesach? Yeah, according to the Rambam, he's going to say Korban Pesach today. Which is why some people say, why shouldn't we bring Korban Pesach? At least let's fulfill the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam says it's the right thing to bring Korban Pesach. How can we not do it? Right? Anyways, not for now. V'osin shmitin v'yovios. You're going to say, wait a second, isn't it Shemitah now? But kecho mitzvasa hamura b'Torah. What does that mean? Today, ladies, Shemitah is only D'Rabbanan, which leads to a lot of leniencies in laws of Shemitah, because it's only D'Rabbanan, right? Which is why, especially chutzards, you could rely on leniencies, you could rely on the mechira, right? Okay, all these complicated things about Shemitah, but all the leniencies are predicated upon the fact that it's only a rabbinic law in the modern era. One day it will be biblical, and perhaps it could even be midoraisa before Mashiach. Conversation for another time. Yes?
Okay. If we know the person's Mashiach based on having done all this stuff, then while he's doing it, let's say there's a random guy. I mean, it could be a tzaddik.
Great question. Great question. What we're going to discover is that we're going to need a Navi first to stand up and say, I'm a Navi. I'm going to prove I'm a Navi because I'm going to do certain miracles. And guess what? That guy's Mashiach. That's what's going to happen.
But I thought you can't believe they're a Navi based on miracles.
So how are we going to know who's Mashiach?
I'm asking you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. It's very complicated. There's going to have to be a Navi who's going to... By the way, what's the name of this Navi? It appears that's exactly Eliyahu's job. He will be the Mevaser, the Geula. No? Is that what it says? Mevaser lanu. Have you seen that song somewhere? Right? Right? Eliyahu. So all the Eliyahu and Navi. Who's this Navi? Lifnei bo Yom Hashem. Okay, so you're right. We're going to have to define in the next few weeks. Because all these terms that we throw out there, like Eliyahu Navi, Lasid Lavo, Gan Eden, Olam Haba, Mashiach, Chesed Meisim, right? Like, are they the same? They're not the same. What's first? Gog and Magog. What's the order? Right? But the answers to all these, some things will be very clear. And some things will be machlokas. Not that you're so surprised. Right? Okay? But at least we'll create, I want to at least find some type of themes, messages. Okay? This is the sheet of the Ramban. This is Ramban. Some things will be fairly clear. Most won't be. Okay. Now, this is for our sake what's important. The third line. Actually, how many people here went to Tiferes Beis Yaakov? Vast majority of the room. Are you ready? I'm sitting next to Rabbi Feigenbaum. I'm being careful, this is on video. I'm sitting next to Rabbi Feigenbaum at a wedding the other night. And we were schmoozing. And we're talking about shir. And I said, oh yeah, you know, Rabbi Feigenbaum, you know, we're giving a shir to women. When were we to wedding? Was it last night? No. It was Monday night, 2 nights ago. And the topic is Mashiach. So he said to me, Rabbi Greenberg, let me tell you, when a girl walks into my office and says, Rabbi, what's going to happen at the times of Mashiach? Apparently this whole thing being written about this person had a prophecy in a dream. He said the girls came to him and said there's like this whole dream about someone said the Mashiach. I don't know, anyways, whatever it is. He said, Mashiach? Make sure your skirts are long, you honor your parents. That's all that matters about Mashiach, right? So he says, Rabbi, it's not going to fly on university campus. They really actually want to study and know things. Maybe that's for you. So it's interesting. His opinion of Mashiach was what? Just wear long skirts and listen to your parents. So, because it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, happens. That's exactly what he told me. So I said, don't you think there's a value in studying it, understanding it better? So then I don't know what he said.
That's
okay.
the way you interpreted it. That's the way, like, you interpreted it. I would have taken it like, that's the form of doing good deeds, and like good deeds leads to redemption.
Right.
The Lubitsch approach.
Right. No. So if he would have said it that way, then, but you know, he said basically be a good Jew, and this way you'll be okay. You know, because if you didn't do tshuva, what? Oh.
He's just saying, what's your job?
Right. Your job. What can you do? Very good. Okay. Fine. So we're gonna see that too. Yeah. Okay. Good. I think that's probably what he was referring to. V'chol mi she'eno ma'amin ba, and this is important. V'chol mi she'eno ma'amin bo. Now, what does that mean? Whoever doesn't believe. Now, listen to this. O mi she'eno mechakel l'biaso. Okay. Now, what does that mean? So the Rambam is not wasting words here, ladies. He makes two statements. Statement A is, whoever doesn't believe Mashiach, and believe, by the way, means that it's true, it's going to happen. And two, mechakel l'biaso. I don't understand. What if I believe in something? Well, here's my assumption. I believe in something. I want that to happen. What is the difference between v'chol mi she'eno ma'amin bo and eno mechakel l'biaso? Aren't they one and the same? What is the Rambam trying to tell me by adding in the phrase of Omi she'ena machake l'biyaso. What's he saying here? And look how serious this offense is, right? You know what? I don't have those two components, says the Rambam. Lo b'shar nevim bilvad kofer. You're not just violating the words of the prophets, perhaps what I quoted before in Yeshayahu. Ela b'Torah u'b'Moshe Rabbeinu. You are literally a heretic against Chamishe Chumshe Torah. Shahar, right now, you're going to say, wait a second, I've read Chumash, I know Chumash backwards and forwards, I don't see any word in there about Mashiach. So how can the Rambam say, you don't believe Mashiach, you're kofar against the Torah of Moshe? The Nevi'im, I understand, according to Psukim in Yeshayahu about the Achrit HaYamim. Why bring Moshe into this? Says the Rambam, not true. The Torah speaks about Mashiach. Take a look. Harei Torah he'ida alav. The Torah testifies and says, V'shav Hashem elokech et shvuscha, v'rachamecha, v'shav v'kabetzcha, im yeh nidachacha b'ksei shamayim. Where are these psukim from? Which parsha? Somewhere in Dvarim, right? In Nitzavim and in Vayelach, it talks about what's called the parsha of Tshuva. It talks about the Jewish people. It's in Vayelach. It talks about how the Jewish people will one day be redeemed and they'll return back to the land of Israel. According to the Rambam, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking out about a future time. Did I bring that pasuk? I didn't. Okay? But that's what... So again, the Rambam writes, not only do you have to believe that he's going to come, and believe I don't mean like believe. I mean that you know that you're faithful, you're loyal to the fact that Moshe is going to come. And you await him coming. If you don't do both components, A and B, you're a kofar, you're a heretic against the Torah, not just the Nevi'im, but also the Torah itself. And he says, these are mefurashim, he says it's clear, and it's explicit, and he goes in and he brings some proofs. Okay, that is pretty shocking and powerful. But we need to understand what exactly does the Rambam mean. So there are a number of different opinions how to understand this. From a Kabbalistic perspective, by the way, the Kabbalists actually believed that what you needed to do certain acts in order to hasten of Mashiach, and that's I think what was alluded to earlier, the idea of, on a bumper sticker, right? Act of kindness bring Mashiach. You ever seen the bumper stickers before? Right? Okay, act of kindness. What about wearing tefillin? Well, it doesn't count, right? So again, it's this Kabbalistic idea that certain things that you do, perhaps in the celestial world, can bring Mashiach, and those are people who in fact wanted to argue that vehemently, that certain things that you do can actually hasten the bringing of Mashiach. You might have heard the line, right? The second Shabbos, if all the Jews keep the second Shabbos. So that also is the same idea of what can we do in order to bring about the coming of Mashiach. So, there was another opinion. I'm going to avoid all the political controversy for a minute, just to save time. Here. In a book written by a guy called Rav Kasher. Rav Kasher lived in, I think he passed away in the 70s or in the 80s. He wrote a book that he found called Kol HaTor, which he said was written by one of the students in the Vilna Gaon, which goes back hundreds of years. And in this book, he asks, what does it mean? What's the difference between you don't have this in your sources. I'm just reading off my piece of paper. Don't worry. And he says, what's the difference? So he says the following. Take a look at... Here it is. Take a look at the bottom of the page on source 5. There are different opinions about who's going to build the Beis HaMikdash. According to the Rambam, who's building the Beis HaMikdash? Who's in charge? Who's the head of the construction project? Mashiach. That not everyone agrees with the Rambam. Another opinion, which you might have heard of, is who's building the Beis HaMikdash? Oh, no, okay. Oh, that's a good question. So if Mashiach is, maybe he'll get his hands dirty, maybe he won't, I'm not sure. But Mashiach will be in charge, according to the Rambam, of the construction project. Meaning we are going to do it with Mashiach. Like, hire, bring the wood here, bring the gold there. The second opinion is human beings are not going to build the third Beis HaMikdash. Very good. It'll be built by Hashem, come from the sky. What exactly does that mean? I'm not really so sure. How does it from the sky? Something supernatural enter the physical world. I'm not quite sure what that's going to mean either. But the opinion is actually quoted by Rashi in source number 5, which is underlined there. Why? Hashem yimloch l'olam ved, that the future Beis Hamikdash, the third one, will come from the sky. That is not the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam holds, as I mentioned earlier, and as again he says in source 6. Source 6, the Rambam writes the following. And this is what Rav Kasher says, maybe the Rambam refers to in Hilchos Malachim, perhaps he alludes to it in Pirush HaMishnah, the Rambam. The Rambam wrote a Pirush in all of the Mishnayos. Not only wrote a Pirush in Mishnayos, he also wrote a few really long and very important introductions. His very, very long and important introduction is his introduction to the 10th Perek of Sanhedrin. The 10th Perek of Sanhedrin is called Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelek Le'olam Haba. And there he speaks a lot about Olam Haba, right? So we need to learn that parts of that as well. And in there he writes the following in source 6. And by the way, the Yud Gimel Karma, the Rambam, come from that introduction. What does he write in source 6? HaYesod Shnei Masar. What is this 12th foundational point according to the Rambam? Yemos HaMashiach. What does it mean? V'hu la'amin. You have to believe. And again, when I say believe, I mean you have to be loyal and committed to. V'lamet shi'avo. He's going to come. Ve'ein lamar shenitacher. It's not going to delay. And if there's delay, I'll wait. Ve'ein likvoa lo zaman. You're not allowed to establish a time of Mashiach, which I need to go on a small tangent for, maybe come back to later. The Rambam felt you were not allowed to calculate when Mashiach is coming. You might have heard other opinions that say, well, Mashiach's going to come at this year and at this time. The Rambam was against all that. There's a Gemara that says you're not allowed to be mechashev es haketz. The Gemara says you cannot calculate the end of days. You're not allowed to. Right? In fact, it could even be a violation. Hopefully that's going to be okay. Now, what's important for the Rambam is he felt you can't calculate Mashiach's coming. You ever heard these things? When's the Mashiach coming? Wednesday, 6,000. Okay. So how do you understand those Gemaras with the? But by the way, the Gemara says there that there's 2,000 years of Tahu, 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years of Mashiach. It just means 2,000 years. Now, it doesn't mean. That to me is very ambiguous. I think a span of 2,000 years is pretty ambiguous. What happens at the end of those 6,000 years? It's automatic he's going to come. By the way, there are even those, if you know, although we say this year is 5775, there are those who actually say it's not 575. We're actually off by about 150, 200 years. It's actually much closer to 6,000 than you think. So, who knows? But anyways, the Rambam felt you're not allowed to calculate when he's going to come. You're not allowed to go through Tanakh to figure out when he's coming, although many people did do that. Amru chachamim tapuach dasan shemach shvei katzin, that those people should be, cursed, the people who try to calculate the end of days. And this is, again, for our purpose, what's important. V'lahamin bo min hagdola v'ahava v'lihispalel lebo'o. You have to daven for his arrival. Says Rav Kasher in his book, in his Perush on the Sefer that he discovered the names of the Talmidim of the Vilna Gaon, Kol HaTorah, Rav Kasher said, let me tell you something. When the Rambam says that you have to just mitzapeh, what is it? The Rambam wrote two things. One was, she'enu mamin, she'enu mechakel l'biyato. What does it mean if you're a person who's not mechakel l'biyato? He wrote it in Pirush HaMishnayos. You need to daven for the coming of Mashiach. So the opinion number one is you have to perhaps maybe hope and yearn and say, hope the Mashiach's going to come, and you have to, again, obviously focus on Masim Tovim, perhaps in order to usher in his coming. And the second component is you have to daven. Where might we fulfill this? In the tefillah that we say regularly. Now this is going to be a very, very, very fun question. How many people here daven Nosal Sfard? Yeah, you daven Nosal Sfard? 2. Only 2 people here? Daven Nosal Sfard? Okay, so this is going to be very interesting. Are you ready? I'm going to say a bracha, and if you're daven Nosal Sfard, add in what I'm missing. Okay? It's hard to do that when you're... Okay. The Nusach Ashkenaz... It's Chaim daven Nosal Sfard, no? Yeah, okay, fine.
Not anymore. Switch back. No.
Really?
Never mind.
V'yumat daven different than Spring Farm?
No.
We started off Ashkenaz, then they switched to Sfard, and I think they still do, but that's not my family daven.
Okay, fine. So, yeah, Greenberg is Nossos Fard. Yeah, for sure. Here we go. Et Samach David of the Chamir Asasmiach. Ve'karno Tarum Yishuasacha. Ki Lishuascha Kivinu Kol Hayom. Sa Umtzapim Lishua. That is not written in Nosach Ashkenaz. Baruch Hashem Matzmiach Keren Yeshua. What is this additional words of Mitzapim Lishua? What are they added for? What's their purpose? Says the Shari Tshuva in source number 8. When you say that paragraph in your siddur 3 times a day, or hopefully at least twice a day, when you say this, when you say it, you should have intent and think about, one day you are going to be asked. Yeshua. What is obviously the Shari Tshuva? Shari Tshuva lived 200 years ago. What's he referring to? Gemara, source number 1. When you're 120 and you're asked, Yeshua, it means when you said at Tzemach David, did you mean it? Did you pay attention? Did you say it? Therefore, therefore, you need, when you daven, to really think. Do I wait? Do I have tikva that the Mashiach will come? Right? V'gam ani mechaven letzapos l'shua Hashem shosei imanu l'atzilinu mikama pigaim ra'im b'chol yom u'v'chol rega. That every day I have intent that God helps us and saves us from so many catastrophes daily. So the notion that God helps us, every day God helps us and provides us salvation, all that is predicated on this notion of longing for Mashiach, which is the ultimate hope and the ultimate salvation.
So one of them is for Mashiach and one is for like our everyday salvation?
So it appears what here the Shari Tshuva wants to add is the notion of kivinu kol hayom. Every day we await Mashiach, just like every day God helps us and provides for us and redeems us on a almost like a mini scale daily. So on a national long-term vision, this happens, we have to wait also for Mashiach. So it's almost like a mini Mashiach every moment and every day, every difficult trial that we go through as a subsection of the great yearning and longing for the ultimate redemption of... So, let's finish reading, because there's just something I want to add that's, I think, cool. And he says, I have personally found that davening this paragraph with intent has tremendously helped me in my life. It's a tremendous insight by the Shari Tshuva. Question. I'm about to give you some history. I only discovered this a few days ago. Nothing against Nossos Fard, but there's a few mistakes. Here's a mistake. Where did Nossos Fard come from? So I'm going to give you a little bit of Kabbalistic understanding. Here's what happens. There's a concept that actually also written, I think it's written by the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, that there are 12 different types of ways to daven. Each shevet, daven, has different nusach. Doesn't mean that they don't daven Shemon Esrei, that instead they play hopscotch. I'm not saying that's a bad example, but whatever, right? But but it means like different words. Fine. Says, who's the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, that there's one nusach which is called nusach haklali, which includes all of the tefillos. Okay? That is Nusach Sfard. So again, the Arizal, the Ari Kadosh, said, I have a copy, I know the Nusach that's accepted by all, passed down through Kabbalah. It's the Nusach that, shall we say, makes it into all 12 gates of God. It's called the Nusach HaKlali, and that's called Nusach Sfard. And in the Arizal Siddur, he wrote in it. And he often wrote down his kavanos. So what kavana did the Ari have? He wrote it down. That document was given to a guy who was an Amaretz. He was just a guy who copied. He was a copier. Guys who copied things without a printing press usually were not the smartest of people. They copied the letters. Have you ever seen these like Shabbos Challah covers that are wrong? You ever seen these? I'll give you an example. On the front page of the CGN a couple weeks ago, they had a copy of the Sersa Dibros. They were butchered. Why? Because the guy knew what he was doing. It was a copyist. That's a perfect example. So there you have a copyist that knew what he's doing, and you had an editor who didn't know what they were doing. That's right. But and you see this, and this is, by the way, how sometimes mistakes get cropped up sometimes in our tefillos too. What happened? The copyist got mixed up between the text and the kavan of the Arizal. The kavan of the Arizal is umitzapim la Yeshua, but that's not the text of the siddur. So that is why, if you take a look at many Nusach Sfarad Sidurim, umitzapim la Yeshua is in brackets.
I don't even have it in mine.
Really?
I'm like wondering. You don't in Sfarad?
Nusach Sfarad, they will often have her put in brackets. Take a look. So I gave this. Yeah, if you take a look, so certain Nusach Sfarad Sidurim do either one of three things: put it in brackets, or leave it out completely. These are Nusach Ashkenaz, so it's not going to help us so much, right? But take a look when you get home later. What? Take a look, and that's the reason for it, because they realized it was actually a mistake. So many Sidurim left it in, but people also put in brackets or delete it altogether. It's a cool example of where you have and the kavan is right, the mitzapim Yeshua is right, but it's not a word that you say, it's what you should be focused on, and we see the Shari Tshuva said the exact same thing.
Why was he copying Nusach Ari and Klali at the same time?
Again, the Nusach Ari, the Nusach of the Arizal, felt that my Nusach is the Nusach HaKlali. This is the Nusach of everybody, and therefore write it down. So that's what he got. So again, the Nusach Ari, which is based on Nusach Sfarad,
it's not though.
it's a little different. There are a few differences between them. Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen it.
That's
what Lubavitch.
Yeah.
Right. So Nusach the Ari felt that he had Nusach HaKlali. Nusach Ari is Lubavitch. It's a little bit different. You're right. It's not totally. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's pretty close. But the Nusach Ari also has the same thing. They put it in Yeshua. So, but that's where the Nusach of Sfaradim is usually a very good Nusach, because it wasn't
so what about
changed
the Roman
so much.
Jews? They have their own
Nusach Italki?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Nusach Italki is very similar to Sfaradi. The Dienas would know, right? Do you have Nusach Italki?
I don't personally.
Your brother does, no? Your dad? Not so much, yeah. Okay. Now, all right, our time is coming to an end. Well, okay. What I want to show you is another way of understanding what does it mean, Tzipita la Yeshua. Rashi in the Gemara says in source 9, the Divrei Nevi'im. Did you await the words of the prophets? Right? Are you waiting? Are you really longing for for them to come true? And what is this idea based on? And we'll end with this in source 10. Says the Smak, the Sefer Mitzvot Katan, which is a very important sefer. This was there's a book called the Smug, Sefer Mitzvos Gdolos, and then here are Smug, Sefer Mitzvos Gdolos, yeah? And then the Kitzer on it was called the Smak, not the original name, the Sefer Mitzvos Katan. Katan, I guess. And the Rishonim used the Smak very, very often. So he's like the tons of Gaonim. It's a very important book. He writes in the first mitzvah, at the end there, which is underlined, and there's a very, very important paragraph about Mashiach, but at the underline, talking about Tzipita la Yeshua, and he says the following: Kach ani rotzeh sheta'amin bi she'ani Hashem Elohechem v'ani asid lekabetz etzchem v'loshieschem v'chein yosheinu b'rachamav shenis, which is also Nusach Sfarad for Kedusha. I don't know if you're aware of that, right? It doesn't matter so much. But what I'm trying to say is that we see this notion of longing, and just like God redeemed us from Egypt, so too God will redeem us once again. When it will happen, we hope it's going to be today. But even if it doesn't happen today, it doesn't affect, and it can't alter, and God forbid should it make us think that we've given up and that's over, that it's not going to happen. For 2,000 years, we've been saying V'Yushalayim Ercha B'Rachamim Tashuv, and that has come true too. Not the second part. We returned to Yerushalayim, but hopefully we've done B'nei Yerushalayim. We're not based in Mitash. We've done a lot of building in Yerushalayim. But the few extra words hopefully we can fill in very soon. But I think this first notion of Tzipita Yeshua is a very important idea. Either, as we've seen, especially through the Kabbalists, who talk about that your mitzvos and your acts and your deeds will change and bring Mashiach, will hasten the coming of Mashiach. And then you also see through many of the Rishonim who say through davening, and specifically Tzipita Yeshua means, do you honestly do you daven for it? What does it mean to daven for it? That you honestly really feel, no matter how difficult and challenging our day-to-day, just like God redeemed us from Egypt. I'm sure they had their day-to-day struggles in Egypt, and what happened at the end of hundreds of years, they were redeemed, so too we will also be redeemed in the ultimate Geula. What the Geula will look like? What's going to happen? Will life be normal, not so normal, mitzvahs, natural, not natural, miraculous? Is why I guess we have the next couple of weeks to try and figure out and piece together what life perhaps will be like and what we have, God willing, to look forward to very soon. Okay, thank you everybody. Next week, same time, same place.